Yet purpose grows with each new day. Through heart and thought, through joy and pain, we shape the good that will remain. Adon olam, ushir shalom.
In defense of all the people who run this temple, that was nothing to do with anything that they installed. That was my computer that went haywire. Sorry about that, everybody. All right, let's continue. Sorry for the delay, but it looked like you were having fun, so that's good. All right, slide number 1. Light. Light has always guided us, illuminating the way through times of darkness and celebrating moments of joy. Tonight, as we kindle these Shabbat lights, may they remind us of the strength we carry within and the responsibilities we share beyond ourselves. May these Shabbat lights bring warmth to our hearts and clarity to our minds. As the flames rise, may they inspire us to act with courage, compassion, and urgency, bringing light to those who need it most.
May we be blessed with light, peace, and purpose.
I'd like to invite Sarah Markowitz to light our candles.
Baruch haor ba'olam, Baruch haor ba'adam, Baruch haor ba'shalom, ba'shalom, Baruch haor, Baruch haor, ba'shabbat.
As the week slips behind us, we open the door to Shabbat, inviting its calm and beauty into our lives. Shabbat does not come to us from beyond, but is something we create, a time to pause, to breathe, to find joy in one another's company and meaning in a shared experience. By gathering on Shabbat, we transform the ordinary into something extraordinary. In this time, we celebrate the tradition of rest and renewal, softening the burdens of the week and strengthening the connections we share. Let us embrace this Shabbat that we create together as a community of humanistic Jews.
Lachun ranana, lachun ranana, lachun ranana la Shabbat. Lachun ranana, lachun ranana, lachun ranana la Shabbat. Nariya, nariya, layom simchatenu, nikadme b'shalom. Nariya, nariya, layom simchatenu, bismirot nariya lo. Lachun ranana, lachun ranana, lachun ranana la Shabbat. Lachun ranana, lachun ranana, lachun ranana la Shabbat.
Is to enter a place free from the demands of everyday lives. We step away from our daily routines in an attempt to gain perspective on where we have been and where we are going. At other times, in other places, we may feel fragile and alone. Yet here, we join together to find strength, to build community as we look with wonder at the universe and seek our place within its vastness. To this place, we come to lengthen our perspective.
To this place, we come to question and explore.
In this place, we awaken our imaginations. In this place, we draw strength as we allow ourselves to dream. Together, we share the challenge of an ever-changing world, a world often beyond our control. Together, we seek to find meaning, calm our anxieties, understand our purpose. Together, we share the burdens and blessings of responsibility. Together, we bond as a community, a true gift of Shabbat.
Ma tovu alecha Yaakov, alecha Yaakov, mishkinoteka Israel. Ma tovu alecha Yaakov, alecha Yaakov, mishkinoteka Israel. Likrat Shabbat lechu v'neilcha, lechu v'neilcha. Ki mekor habracha, mekor habracha. Ma tovu alecha Yaakov, alecha Yaakov, mishkenokeka Israel. Ma tovu alecha Yaakov, alecha Yaakov, mishkenoteka Yisrael.
Our capacity to pursue lives of integrity depends upon our freedom of inquiry. One person's truth may be another's heresy. Unfettered investigation is the only path to knowledge. We must each be free to find our way. Baruch Spinoza put it this way: people's habits of mind differ. Some more readily embrace one form of faith and some another. This is because what moves one person to pray may move another to scoff. I conclude that all people should be free to choose for themselves the foundations of their creed. Faith should be judged only by its fruits.
There's a place with answers we are seeking. There's a place to find our light of hope. Where's the strength to realize our vision? Yesh makom b'tochenu, yesh makom b'tochenu. Look within yourself, you'll find there. There's a place with wisdom that can guide us. There's a place where we know what's right or wrong. Where's a path to peace that we all long for? Yesh makom b'tochenu, Yesh makom b'tochenu. Look within yourself, you'll find it there.
We spend our days searching for meaning, for wisdom, for directions to guide us forward. We look to the world around us to teach us, to history, and to the voices of our ancestors. We ask, how do we find the courage to face our future? We ask, how do we choose which paths to take? We ask, how do we do these things while remaining true to ourselves? What we seek is closer than we think. The spark of understanding, the source of hope, the clarity to choose the right path. These live within us, waiting to be recognized, waiting to be embraced. Shabbat is a time to pause and gather our strength. It is a time to think about who we are and what we can make of our lives. On Shabbat, we take a moment to set aside the noise, the distraction, and the demands of the week. Shabbat invites us to return to ourselves and contemplate the questions that our lives are posing. As we enter this special time, let us accept the invitation to open our hearts, quiet our doubts, and remember this:
The
the capacity for wisdom, for courage, and for discernment is already here inside us.
Niftach lanu sharet tzedek chen v'chesed v'rachamim. Niftach lanu sharet tzedek chen v'chesed v'rachamim. Ele sharim la shalom, niftach lanu vanav ovam. Ele sharim la shalom, niftach lanu vanav ovam. Niftach lanu sharet tzedek chen v'chesed v'rachamim. Niftach lanu sharet tzedek chen v'chesed v'rachamim.
Let us strive to lead loving, compassionate lives with our hearts, with our wisdom, and with our actions. Let these be the ideas that we inscribe in our innermost heart. May we practice them day and night, teaching them diligently to our children through our words and especially through our deeds, so that coming generations shall learn to revere and celebrate life.
Eifori oribi, eifo tikvati, tikvati bi, eifo kochi, kochi bi, vegam bach, eifo kochi, kochi bi, Vegam bach, where is my light? My light is in me. Where is my hope? My hope is in me. Where is my strength? My strength is in me and in you, and in you. Where is my strength? My strength is in me and in you, and in you.
In the pursuit of a just world, may we hold fast to the ideals that give life its deepest meaning. Among these are the courage to hope even when hope is scarce, to dream of peace even when surrounded by uncertainty. Though the path to peace may be long, let us never lose sight of it. May we remember that peace is not only the absence of struggle, but the fullness of life that blossoms from justice, security, and compassion. Wherever there are struggles to achieve such a peace, let wisdom always guide action. May we be vessels of peace, always carrying it in our hearts and minds, even when we seek to protect what we hold dear. And may the world we leave behind be one that reflects our highest ideals: freedom, understanding, and enduring harmony among all people.
Nase shalom ba'olam, nase shalom aleinu, ve'akol ha'olam ve'imiru shalom. Nase shalom ba'olam, shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'akol, ve'akol ha'olam ve'imiru shalom, shalom. Nase shalom ba'olam, nase shalom aleinu, ve'al kol ha'olam ve'imiru shalom. Nase shalom ba'olam, shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'akol, ve'akol ha'olam ve'imiru shalom, shalom.
In this community where we find strength and common purpose, we turn our minds and hearts toward all those who need our love and support. Those who are ill, those who suffer pain of the body or spirit, those who are lonely, those who have been wronged. Tonight, our well wishes are extended to these members of our community and their loved ones, to Lee Bricker, Saul Foreman, Martin Kurland, and Jim Walker, along with anyone whom you're thinking about tonight as we go around the room. Anyone on this side? Suzanne? Anybody else on this side? Elaine? Jerry, you had somebody? Or did I see another hand over here? Jody Michelle. Thank you. And I saw another hand too. No? I can't see anybody's hand. Oh, there you go.
Somali American citizens of Minneapolis and St. Paul, who are Duppenfuhrer has scapegoated so unjustly.
May all who suffer know that they are not alone, that we are there. May they be healed quickly. May they experience a complete recovery of refuah shlema, the renewal of their bodies and the renewal of their spirits.
Makom hakoach betocheinu, mekorot habracha michevroteinu. May the source of strength that dwells so deep within us.
Help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say,
Shalom.
Mekom HaKoach
betochenu,
Mekorot
habracha mivrotenu. May those in need of healing know refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Shalom. Death cannot take that which is locked in our hearts. With our tears and our sorrow we remember. With our courage and our strength we do not forget. Acts of kindness, deeds of courage will remain. Beauty created, wisdom shared is not lost. With our tears and our sorrow we remember. With our tears and our sorrow we remember. Our thoughts turn to those who are no longer with us, our own loved ones, those whom our friends and neighbors have lost, the martyrs of our people whose graves are unmarked, and those of every people and nation whose lives have been a blessing to humanity. As we remember them, we meditate on the meaning of love and loss, of life and death. We recall now our loved ones whom death has recently taken from us, those who died at this season in years past, and those whom we have taken into our hearts with our own. Tonight, our congregation observes the yard sites of these beloved members of our congregation and their loved ones. Shirley Belkin, Rose Bowman, Marilyn Orphus Bricker, Matilda Citron, Harry Cohen, Sadie Cohen, Bernard Davis, Sylvia Deroven, Betty Evans, Irving Feldman, Marshall Ferguson, Joel Foreman, Dorothy Frank, Cantor Israel Fuchs, Celia Goldsmith, Gerald Jerry Grodsky, Ida Gus, Florine Halpern, Marguerite Harris, Madeline Jacobs, Eugene Kahn, Irving King, Priscilla Molnar, Sylvia Paul, Gertrude Pinkney, Arthur Rice, Helen Rice, Frida Solomon, David Walker, and Betty Wilsey. If there's someone whom you're thinking about, whom you're remembering tonight, whose name you'd like to share, Ruth?
Sam and Anna Janice.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yehi zichram livracha. May the memories of these dear people always provide us with the blessings of the wisdom and the lives that they led. And may they, as we remember them, come back to us alive in memory, a blessing to comfort us. If you can do so comfortably, please rise as together we recite our humanistic interpretation of Kaddish. Nit gadal v'nit gadash beruach ha'adam. Let us dignify and ennoble all people in the spirit of our shared humanity. Let us acclaim the preciousness of life. Let us show gratitude for life by approaching it with reverence. Let us embrace the whole world, even as we wrestle with its parts. Let us each in our own way take up our share in serving the world and seeking truth. May our commitment to life help us to strengthen the healing of spirit and peace of mind. May justice and peace permeate and comfort the house of Israel and all those who dwell on earth. And let us say, Ken Yehi, may it be so. Please be seated. If you've ever read any of my commentaries, anybody here at all read my commentaries? Hey, that's great. All right. You might remember that I recommended at some point, I've probably recommended it several times, a publication online called The Free Press. Not the Detroit newspaper,
but the online journal published by Barry Weiss, who has herself been in the news lately, the newly appointed editor-in-chief of CBS News. I prefer to call it the FP these days because that's how I remember the website, and it's something I read to the extent that I do anything religiously. Despite an enormous amount of criticism aimed at it due to its practice of discouraging bubble journalism, that echo chamber approach of too many news sources, the reason I appreciate it is because in this age when so many media outlets speak only in and to those echo chambers, the FP makes a genuine effort to present divergent perspectives, sometimes radically so. It insists that readers confront ideas they may disagree with. In other words, it's a pretty humanistic kind of approach. It gives a platform to public intellectuals who are not always fashionable, but who are usually worth reading. Since its founding not too long ago, it's been covering through its straight news and its op-eds the recent phenomenon of young people, and it's a real phenomenon, and it includes the not so young too, returning to that old-time religion, to God, as the answer to all of the ills of society. Now, I read all of these, as frustrating as their arguments have been, even as I remember that iconic humanists, non-theists like Sam Harris, Bill Maher, particular favorite of mine, and others have also been highlighted in its coverage and written its op-eds. So it did not come as any surprise to me to find a powerful piece written last week, one that inspired me to speak tonight, by two very humanistic, in the non-theistic sense, wonderful scholars. The authors of the piece, which was headlined "The Golden Age of Humanity, We're Living in It," are Professor Steven Pinker and Marian L. Tupy. Now, its title may sound very uplifting and affirming, but its intent is actually to issue a warning. And the introduction, which does not pull any punches, starts this way. Would we be better off living in the Middle Ages? Astonishingly, they continue, influential voices on the American intellectual right now seem to think so. Rather than affirming the Enlightenment ideals that inspired this country's foundings, reason, rights, markets, liberal democracy, and church-state separation, they're longing for, of all things, rule from the throne and the altar. Last month at Yale, this is their words continuing, the influential political blogger Curtis Yarvin, in a debate against Free Press contributor Jed Rubenfeld, who is himself alone worth the price of a subscription. Well, this Curtis Yarvin, they said, argued that America ought to, quote, end the democratic experiment and establish a monarchy. This Yarvin fellow has noted that Donald Trump is biologically suited to be America's monarch. The ideas might sound extreme, but they have been influential. J.D. Vance describes Yarvin as a friend and has cited his work. And Yarvin is part of a family of movements known as the Dark Enlightenment, techno-authoritarianism, and neo-reaction, they write it NRX, that reject the entire family of Enlightenment values. Meanwhile, they continue, theocracy is making a comeback in movements known as theoconservatism, Christian nationalism, and national conservatism. The national conservatism statement of principles, for example, declares that, quote, where a Christian majority exists, public life should be rooted in Christianity and its moral vision, which should be honored by the state and other institutions, both public and private. They did throw a little Judeo into it, too, in a part that I'm not reading to you. Did not assuage me. What follows in their article is an extraordinarily sober and intellectually grounded reminder that despite such longings for a religiously guided past, it is our modern age, despite its many imperfections, that remains, yes, the most humane era in recorded history. As they write later in the piece, every generation believes that it stands amid ruins of a better era. Nostalgic people, have fallen for this illusion, weaving a fantasy of civilizational decline from Edenic bliss. All available evidence shows the opposite. The earliest stages of our civilization, they write, were stained by ignorance, superstition, sickening cruelty, grinding poverty, and early death. From those rude beginnings, the heirs of the Enlightenment deployed knowledge and sympathy to claw increments of progress from an indifferent universe. Wise people, they say, should cherish these accomplishments and ensure that we don't squander them based on figments about a make-believe golden age. As these two scholars strongly point out, none of what we know today happened by accident. Now, some of you may already be familiar, I think probably more familiar with Steven Pinker, yes? Well, if you're not, you should be, and I hope this will be your introduction to him. He's not only one of the world's most influential public intellectuals and great psychologists, but also one of the most prominent Jewish non-theistic intellectuals writing today. His scholarship is empirical, unapologetically rational, relentlessly humane. His point of view has shaped how millions think about human progress. I am among them. Just as an aside, he's also part of a kind of dynamic duo of brilliant Jewish non-theists. He's married to Rebecca Goldstein, who wrote a brilliant book about Spinoza and secular ethics that I reviewed, I wanted to say some years ago, but I think it was like 13 years ago now. Dr. Pinker's co-author, Marian L. Tupy, was less familiar to me. He is, though, a senior fellow at the Cato Institute, and he's the editor of humanprogress.org, which I checked out, and it is well worth it. His work focuses on global development, human flourishing, and the many measurable ways in which the world has improved through science, technology, liberal democracy, and expanding human rights. He's one of the leading contemporary voices pushing back against cultural nihilism and civilizational self-loathing, two of the phenomena that seem to be inspiring the current religious nostalgia. Now, for humanistic Jews, their arguments are, I would say, nothing less than compelling, from both the humanistic direction and, importantly, from the Jewish direction, too. That is because, as they point out, the forces that make life better for all of humanity, reason, science, freedom of inquiry, free expression, secular governance, democratic accountability, are those very same forces that have protected Jewish life, Jewish safety, and Jewish flourishing. They wrote this piece out of concern that these achievements have been recently feeling more fragile, and I think many of us have experienced that. This return to religion has been accompanied by what, before the rise of podcasts and social media, would have been considered crackpot ideas, such as the ones that I read from their introduction. They include these new theologies and ideologies that romanticize pre-modern hierarchies, the King Donald, I suppose. Medieval Christianity, even feudalism has been suggested. They may have sounded absurd to us, but we no longer live in an age when absurd ideas can be safely ignored. Yet despite this, as Pinker and Tupy point out, rather than affirming the Enlightenment ideals that inspired this country's founding, the ones I mentioned, reason, rights, markets, liberal democracy, and church-state separation, too many people are turning the other way. And as we've been learning to our great cost, these days, bizarre notions can go from the fringes to the mainstream with astonishing speed. We need look only at what has happened with the rise in anti-Semitism to understand that. It was less than a year ago that I gave a long discourse about the kinds of dangerous nonsense that we are lately hearing much more of from people like Tucker Carlson and his gang of ignoramuses. The fact that he and the geniuses he promotes also hate Jews is a good reminder that their ideas will ultimately harm us, and perhaps humanistic Jews first and foremost. If Pinker and Tupy are right about anything, and I believe they are right about many things, it is that the extraordinary improvements of the modern age did not descend from heaven, nor did they emerge from moral purity or prayer or piety. They arose from something much more grounded, far more fragile, and terribly much more demanding of human responsibility. Those things came from us, from our choices, our curiosity, our courage, our willingness to challenge inherited certainties. The modern world, this world in which more people live longer, freer, safer, and more meaningful lives than at any other point in either Jewish or human history, was built through the unfolding of Enlightenment values. Pinker and Tupy remind us of this too. The Enlightenment, beginning roughly in the mid-17th century, saw the elevation of all of these things we talk about, of reason, of science, of humanism, and progress. These values revolutionized how people understood the world and our place in it. And that revolution did come about to replace religion. Virtually all Enlightenment, I knew I was reading this sentence wrong because I left a word out. It is important to note this, so let me state it again, despite my typographical error. That revolution did not come about to replace religion. It's important for us to remember that. Virtually all Enlightenment thinkers believed in God. It's an important thing for us to know. Here's what it replaced. It replaced the ultimate authority of religion's gatekeeping priests, those who were very sure, very certain about the demands of their deity, what he wanted from every human being. In this way, the Enlightenment shifted the center of gravity from divine revelation, or really what people claimed to be divine revelation, to human investigation. Politically speaking, this meant moving from kings and clerics, clergy, to citizens and thinkers, from obedience to inquiry. Once that shift began, everything changed. Scientific discoveries and technological innovations began to transform everyday life. Literacy spread. Slavery slowly, but with time assuredly, began to fall. Women challenged legal subservience, and religious minorities, to speak to a question we had in our class on Monday, even Jews, we began the slow ascent into public life. And for a variety of reasons, the first great republic that the Enlightenment inspired was here, the United States of America, the very first nation to declare that its governance would be of, by, and for the people. As Pinker and Tupy emphasize, this progress was not inevitable. Progress, they say, is not automatic. It is the result of institutions and norms that allow knowledge to advance and human potential to flourish. Humanistic Judaism itself, along with, by the way, all the other modern Jewish movements, including modern Orthodox Judaism, all owe their existence to this worldview. When we strip away all the fantasies of past golden ages and all the nostalgic theological insistence that the past was more orderly or more righteous, we find that none of those claims are historically true. This is what makes secularism not merely correct, but indispensable. Our progress was made possible by freedom. And this is what makes the current wave of religious nostalgia so dangerous. It fails to understand the very sources of this progress. Even as they argue that a, quote, God-centered society will restore meaning and order, Pinker and Tupy remind us, the societies so many romanticize were marked by, think back to your history lessons, ignorance, meaningless hierarchies, violence, and suffering that we would never tolerate today. Their nostalgia is for a world that never actually existed. Those who argue, my words now, that a return to God will save civilization, they are ignoring reality. Civilization only improved when human beings claimed the right to think for ourselves, to question, to govern ourselves. For Jews, these Enlightenment values did more than improve life. They made Jewish flourishing possible. Without secularism, without democracy, without the separation of church and state, Jewish equality under the law would be unthinkable, and it was. So would Jewish citizenship, something we did not enjoy until after the Enlightenment. So would Jewish cultural expression in all of its blossoming. Humanistic Judaism, of course. And that's why we, as a movement, alongside those in other modern Jewish movements, are so committed to the broader, larger secular order. We refuse to misremember history. And that is precisely why at this moment, when these political figures, these now fringe but quickly moving to the center voices, who are openly promoting this medieval Christianity and all this feudalism and fantasies of a sacred order, well, we cannot afford to misremember history. If we do, there will be no Jews. If our societies are to protect the freedom to keep making these choices, one of the things that's become clear to me from all of this renewed nostalgia for our not so golden past is that those of us in what I am calling the coalition of reality better learn how to tell our story. We don't do it that well. One of the ways we must do so is by reminding people of the power of secularism. And in a nation, a world of believers in God, that must include a reminder to advocate secularism does not mean to demand atheism. Let me say that again. Secularism is not about non-theism or atheism or agnosticism or what you do or do not believe lies beyond this earth. Public secularism cannot be a kind of hostility to religion, nor can we frame it or allow it to be framed by others as an attempt to banish people's faith from public life. It is only this, the simple, profound commitment that the state belongs to all of us and cannot be claimed by any one theology. That's how we got to the core human achievement that allowed the Enlightenment to become more than a European thought experiment. They weren't simply imagining what would happen if there was a rule by laws and citizens rather than priests and kings. They worked to make it happen. So the freedom to believe in God or not to believe must be seen by us as essential to human dignity that we so often speak about because it is key to freedom. As Pinker and Tupy remind us, the modern achievements we cherish all flow from a neutrality. They write, the institutions that foster progress, science, markets, political equality, and individual rights, as I've said, depend on secular governance. A government beholden to divine authority cannot adapt, cannot self-correct, and cannot recognize universal human dignity. And there are such governments and such nations and societies on earth today. And we hold them in contempt for how they treat their citizens. All of this happens to be an important teaching of our Jewish history, where governments allied tightly with religion, whether Christian, Muslim, usually, or otherwise, rarely, because we lived in Christian and Muslim societies, Jewish life was almost always precarious. Where governments moved to secularism, that's when we began to flourish. That's when we began to look at our own practices. That's when our own Reformation took place. It's not that complicated, really. A society that's defined by one religion can't ever fully accept those outside of it. A society defined by law and reason and pluralism can. This is why the Society for Humanistic Judaism established the group Jews for a Secular Democracy. I'm sure all of you have heard about that by now. I fully support their work and have participated in calling attention to Christian nationalism. I encourage them and groups like them to expand this mandate towards education of our young people, and yes, to those who are arriving in our nation now, the newcomers, so that our Enlightenment values are not further diluted through delusions, try saying that 3 times fast, diluted through delusions about the greatness that will follow the reestablishment of God's kingdom on earth. Additionally, we on the side of the already convinced, this coalition of reality, well, we need to sharpen our ideas about when we fight and what we're fighting for. Our nation's founders knew that one of the rules of creating a secular society was that it must also be a place, as I've mentioned, of religious freedom. But this naturally puts into motion a set of often competing values. For example, and it's a big one, on one hand, our Constitution's Establishment Clause meant that there would be no official religion. But on the other hand, that same Constitution's Free Exercise Clause meant that even people in power were allowed to live religious lives and, yes, even look to their own faiths to guide them as they govern. That's allowed. That's freedom. Believe it or not, I have a little sympathy, just a little, for that woman, Kim Davis, who's been trying to overturn the constitutional right to same-sex marriage. You will recall that she is that Christian county clerk who refused to sign marriage licenses for same-sex couples because she felt it violated her religious beliefs. Obviously, I don't agree with her about same-sex marriage. But I do believe that America is strong enough and Americans wise enough to figure out a way that my marriage can be protected without forcing her to be the one to stamp the document. My point here being that between education for what secularism means and sometimes compromising with religious people in such a way that secular governance, overarching government neutrality in these kinds of issues can protect both rights to freedoms like same-sex marriage and rights to freedoms that allow perhaps the assignment of another government clerk or instrument of government to stamp those documents. If we can do this, we might better strengthen the essence of our secular democracy. Really, these are the only ways we have to go. Because even the most religiously authoritarian individual, by the mere act of living in our secular society, has, when we present it the right way, the capacity to understand that if we combined all the claims made by all the religions about the deities they believe commands the universe, we would end up with a character whose attributes contradict each other so wildly, whose demands are so mutually exclusive that if it were a human being, they would perhaps be institutionalized for florid and hopeless confusion. Yet another reason why secularism is the only ethical choice for a diverse society. And to continue as a species building upon the extraordinary gains that Pinker and Tupy describe, gains that as Jews we have learned, I hope, never to take for granted. Pinker and Tupy make clear, and I want to emphasize this is not an academic debate. Something deeper is happening in our culture. This regressive resurgence of religious nostalgia is not arising in a vacuum. It is a response to a time of real uncertainty. Many people are feeling unmoored by technology, by economic disruption, by political polarization, and more. And when that happens, well, what do people do? They often reach out for the comforts of religious revival and absolutism because they come with certainties. They have authorities, and they provide simple answers to the complexity of modern life. And this is why they are a real danger. The movement's calling for a return to sacred order, Christian nationhood, God's kingdom, or their parallels in an Islamic state are not really offering meaning. They're offering submission. Submission of the kind that they imagine fueled that magical past, but which we as Jews and humanists know always harmed minorities. Always harmed us. Nostalgia, they say, for pre-modern social orders is not a harmless aesthetic preference. The systems people romanticized were cruel to outsiders, to dissenters, to the powerless, to anyone whose dignity did not align with the dominant faith. We know that the movements now rising, however they dress themselves, are movements that shrink the moral universe, that narrow human possibility, and that they really do have the potential to reverse everything the Enlightenment achieved. That is why the work ahead for us must be proactive, not reactive. And we are all too frequently reactive. We cannot simply shout down, mock, or otherwise belittle the people who are listening to these extremists, or they themselves, even if some of them richly deserve it. Nor can we, given the reality of our own country, rely on courts or the political cycle. What then can we do? I propose that we must take on 3 tasks that as secularists, humanists, and Jews, we have not always performed so well. First, tell the story clearly about how freedom really grew, how democracy actually expanded, how reason unlocked human flourishing, and crucially, how secularism protects believers and non-believers alike. Secondly, invite people in, especially young people and newcomers to our country, most of whom came here because they did not crave theocracy or authoritarianism, but rather, all of these folks, well, what are they looking for? Real meaning. Meaning that can be found in the dignity of free inquiry, of using their own minds, of participating in a democracy, of living in a society where everyone has equal worth under the law. And finally, number 3, we all must seek to better model what a secular society should look like, demonstrating to them, because we are committed secularists, and I am not here to convince you that we should be. That must be obvious if you're in this room. But we must be able to show them that our secularism is far from nihilism. That in fact, what we believe is the very framework, the very foundation of our civilization. It is not a sin to speak about Western civilization, by the way. That is the cradle of this Enlightenment. And that framework included secularism strongly and deeply, and is what allows people to pursue their own deepest commitments without coercion. It is a framework, a foundation that makes ample room for all kinds of expressions of non-coercive religious faith, or none at all. This is because it's a framework that's grounded in fairness and neutrality, and in a pluralism confident enough, and we must be, to make the practical compromises, Kim Davis, necessary to accommodate as many points of view as possible. That in turn cultivates a renewed appreciation for why all of us must continue to safeguard they, them, and us. The fairness, neutrality, pluralism, and compromise that protects our own good and their good too, our welfare and theirs. A secular democracy at its best is what does this. And at this moment, and I'm talking to all of us, this whole nation, but certainly we who know better, we are failing in our task to promote the greatness of secularism in general and secular democracy in particular. And so when people, too many, see secularism only as yet another set of prohibitions and coercions, you must do this, you must do that, they will be seduced by those who give them permission to impose their beliefs. We must do this and we must do that. Who give them permission to dominate society and who seek to reassure them that when they're in charge, power will be sanctified. Pinker and Tupy call this, and I agree, a moment when we are standing at a crossroads, a choice between the open horizon of human possibility and the closed gates of theological authority. They write, modernity can endure only if people defend the institutions that made it possible. Well, that's our task as humanistic Jews and as heirs to the Enlightenment that made our very existence possible. The movements rising around us are powerful because they offer the illusion of escape from responsibility, from ambiguity, from the difficult work of living freely. Freedom is not easy. But humanistic Judaism has always insisted on something more courageous, that we seek to find meaning and justice and progress not from above, but from humanity itself. It is for this reason I believe and encourage people to talk to reasonable people outside of our bubbles, to reasonable people outside our echo framework, our echo chambers. Having done so now for some years, 3 to be exact, I've learned a lot, and I found common ground with people I did not expect that I shared it with. Spinoza, whom we heard from earlier, was a very early proponent, perhaps one of the most significant first voices, and not a coincidence that it was a Jewish voice, of reason. Also taught this at the end of one of his books. All things excellent are as difficult as they are rare. Our secular democracy, the things we believe, are indeed excellent. When we look at the thousands of years of human civilization, we see very plainly that in that scope, it is very, very rare. No one can argue that defending it is not difficult, which includes making difficult compromises. But the rewards of human progress and flourishing are well worth it. So let us take up this task. Thank you very much for listening to my words. No, thank you. For listening to my words, and I hope that we can, as a congregation, commit ourselves to working to promote secularism in a positive way. Something we're not as good at as a group of people. I don't mean humanistic Jews, I don't mean this congregation, I mean all of us in this country who sit in a certain position on that. All right, sir, will you bring us this beautiful Adon Olam? Thank you. I'm going to do the thank yous before you play, just as you're tinkling. Thanks to Arthur for doing the slides. And I'm sorry I got so upset about it. It was my computer that screwed up. I apologize. To David, who always does such a beautiful job with streaming, even though obviously there was a little bit of blank point there when I left the stage. What can I do? To Joseph for the beautiful music. To all of you for coming. Thank you. I know it was a freezing night. And at Carol. Where's Carol? She's in the back doing the Oneg Shabbat. Thank you to Carol for doing the Oneg Shabbat week in and week out. That is, I would say, a thankless job, but I hope that everybody will thank her. Okay, now let's conclude with our new Adon Olam interpretation.
Adon Olam Ashir Adam Oev Chaim Ha'olam Kol Lo Ole
b'shir shalom. Uva'adam nitzach halom. Before our time the world began, and from that dawn our story ran. Through nature's law and life's design, we seek our meaning, yours and mine. No hand unseen directs our way, yet purpose grows with each new day. Through art and thought, through joy and pain, we shape the good that will remain. Adon Olam, the song we are. Our world steered by humanity. Our love of life stirs songs of peace. Within us all such dreams increase. Adon Olam, Ushir Adam, Ohev Chaim v'ha'olam, Kol ole b'shir shalom, Uva'adam nimtzach halom.
Shabbat Shalom. Next week, Super Supper.